2015, a centerpiece of the 3.0 era. Immortalized as a year where most, especially veteran fans, felt that the band had truly started to regain their confidence and deliver consistency with a laid-back but fiery approach. What was supposed to be a quiet year turned out quite different for the band and its community when Trey found himself helming the Fare Thee Well tour, celebrating 50 years of the Grateful Dead. An era-defining summer tour capped off with a legendary festival that arguably goes up against any of the best weekends in Phish history, as well as their awaited return to MSG, showcasing a clever hourglass theme. First, let's take a look at what Trey and Tom were up to early in the year. With the Fuego cycle winding down, Trey was eager to dive into writing new material again. These sessions would produce several songs that would later appear on Big Boat, along with the ambitious new prog centerpiece, Mercury.
What we do when we write is we'll lock ourselves, we'll go find a little beach house or something. We went to the Outer Banks this time.
Right.
The guy who I wrote that with, of course, is my friend Tom Marshall. You know, it's the four of us up there, but he's a huge part of what Phish is. And we started writing together really, I think, in 5th grade. So many years before I met the other Phish members. So anyway, like I said, that song was written right before the summer tour. And Tom and I wrote 5 or 6 new songs.
The piece unfolds with a subtle progressive structure that stays grounded, but blends vivid imagery drawn from Greek mythology as well as scientific phenomena into a surreal tapestry.
Mercury is a good example of the way a lot of the stuff that Tom and I have written over the years has come together. Sometimes when we do songwriting sessions or something, Tom will bring some poems and, you know, I'll put them to music. Mercury was not like that. Mercury was an idea and a shared moment, and then a lot of crafting. I always thought it was kind of about perspective. He and I were driving in the car during a songwriting session to the store, and this guy came on the radio and said, "Hey, this is Brent from Dobie X." Started singing, "Hey, this is Brent from Dobie X." And there was this little earworm. Could we write a song about perspective? When you think your problems are really big and you're staring at them, you can completely lose perspective and like dive into your own problems. And when you think about your place in the universe and in the world, the problems aren't so big. So the days that are met with loneliness aid and abet this loneliness. Mercury is an element and also a myth. So then we would both go online, like start reading about Mercury and like kind of emailing back and forth. He would say something like, you know, actually Mercury's day is longer than its year. Then I would build it into the song, or I would send him an article about the Vermilion thing or the Unbreakable Net. All of that stuff is legend around the god Mercury, and off we went.
In Book 8 of the Odyssey, Odysseus and his men learn about the tale of Mars and Venus. In the story, Vulcan suspects his wife Venus is having an affair with Mars. He decides to lay a trap of invisible chains around their bed, anticipating their next meeting. Once the lovers are ensnared, Vulcan calls the gods to witness their shame. Mercury, amused, jokes to Apollo that he'd be willing to be bound in thrice as many chains to get the chance to lie with Venus. The rest of the lyrics seem to reflect this spectacle that drops the curtain on how the gods and goddesses interact with each other. This might refer to Mercury's elusive visibility, only appearing during twilight. It could also suggest Mercury's mythological role as a revealer of messages, mirroring Phish's knack for sudden musical clarity. We can maybe interpret the next line as Odysseus recollecting on how he handled the deception dealt on him and his men. In the ruins of the ancient Mayan city Palenque in Mexico, there stands a temple that shelters the tomb of its noble queen. Her remains were covered in cinnabar powder, a mercury-based compound of which in one of two forms will produce an intense raspberry-colored pigment known as vermilion. The repeated verse gives way to a contemplative, marimba-led moment of shifting major and minor chord changes. Then we reach a steady but slightly funky dark groove in E Dorian, which brings us into our last verse.
The voice that you ignore might be your future calling. Alone we're tossed about like a bottle in the sea. But together we ascend and we then escape this gravity.
The unbreakable net mentioned earlier, once seen as a trap, transforms into a symbol of security. The final lyrics may again nod to the Odyssey or serve a broader allegorical purpose, reflecting the god Mercury's role as a bearer of wisdom that one may choose to ignore and consequently stray from the proper path, as well as alluding to the dangers of over self-reliance and how working with others can help you ascend to a more productive state of being. Mercury in the context of live Phish has delivered a handful of big jams, notably a few strong examples in 2018, but has acted more as a supplemental improv vehicle while letting other songs take the big spot in a show. Next, we have to examine the elephant in the room. How did Trey end up at the center of the Grateful Dead's final run of shows to celebrate their legacy?
I saw the Dead at the Hartford Civic Center for the first time ever in 1983, and it had just an enormous. It was like getting hit in the head with a baseball bat.
And it blows his mind.
It was the first time I had seen in the rock and roll setting music as a community builder, where the band members were all listening to each other and improvising. The audience was an active participant in the musical event. Totally changed my concept.
We had a particularly hot sound check. We came back and played the show, and it was a hot night. And I guess we took the tapes and put out an archival recording of that show that you were at.
Yeah,
Maybe it was because you were there. You know, you brought the vibe, man.
The core four members were in search of a guitarist with unparalleled experience in their own realm of live music. Someone who could stand in Jerry's place, but not to mimic him. So they unanimously settled for Trey, and Phil proceeded to send him an email immediately following the end of the 2014 New Year's Eve run. Eagerly accepting the invitation, he was determined to fully immerse himself. Rather than simply learning the basics of each song, he dissected various guitar lines, such as licks from the early 70s, by transposing them to different keys to really get at the root essence of Jerry's playing. Similarly, he wasn't sure what vocal parts he would be given, so he went ahead and learned every single one of those as well.
First of all, it was a thrill to be asked. Obviously, I've been a fan my whole life, and I've gotten to play with the various band members, but not together. So I got a letter from Phil, which was a very nice letter. And the only problem was that I couldn't get them to tell me what songs we were going to do. So I got Bob on the phone, and we managed to come up with a list of about 60 or 70 songs. You know, I was talking to Bruce Hornsby backstage, and he said one of the things that really knocked him out about hanging out with Jerry was that he had an encyclopedic knowledge of American gospel, American blues, Americana, and also, you know, Irish folk tunes and stuff. And you know, you can hear that in Jerry's playing and then also in his songwriting with Hunter. You're playing the kind of American improvisational music that myself and so many other people do. You owe it to Jerry Garcia, period. He invented the form.
Predictably, the announcement was met with controversy, but as Brian Swank wrote in Lonesome Banjo Chronicles, what these old heads don't realize is that Trey is the man in the scene with the most experience in rock improv outside of the Dead, and fundamentally understands how to tap into the musical cosmos more than any other option.
I love Phish. Are you kidding? These guys, their level of creativity, their level of respect, their level of giving joy to other people. When you think of the great human values, passion, enthusiasm, industriousness, friendship, loyalty, cooperation, poise, confidence, competitive greatness, faith, patience, all these things that go into making a life. That's what Phish brings you all the time.
Bill Walton is a famously he was backstage at all 5 shows, and he kept giving me this pep speech every night. And I came on stage, and he came up. He's very tall. So you're looking up. He says, "Good job, Trey." He looks at me. He's like, "Now you're on a team." Basically what he started saying was that he said, when you're on a team, that doesn't mean everyone is even. Even Bill Kurtzman and stuff, they were like, "We like it when you go." They kept saying that. So last night, we were going to do Althea. So they were kind of going back and forth. Bobby wanted it slow, Phil wanted it fast. Bobby wanted it slow, Phil wanted it fast, right? And it was cool. They were just talking, and I'm kind of standing over there, and I was kind of saying, well, I have to sing this. And they were kind of looking at each other like, who's going to count it? And then just laid into it. I was like, I looked at 1, 2, 3, go. Everybody was so happy. I could feel it. Yeah. Like Phil looked over at me. He was like, yes, boom, 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 let's go. I think that was the point that Bill Walton had been trying to make. That in that band, that's how it worked for 32 years. And
The shows also taught him to cool it on the ripcords. I love to jam. I love to jam long. But even for me, the time would come when I think, this is too noodly. Let's play the next song. I would do something, a lick. Then Phil would look over at me like, what's your rush, dude? Trey also came to appreciate just how powerful Bill Kreutzmann and Mickey Hart were as a driving rhythmic force. Like during the opening of Truckin' on the first night in Santa Clara, I knew who was driving this ship. And when it came to Bobby, he truly saw how much of a soulful singer he was in his own right. Especially in Samson and Delilah. When he started singing like that, boom, 80,000 people came together. It didn't matter if it was in tune. That wasn't the point. I could feel him unifying the stadium. And finally, just before the first set on the final night in Chicago, as he waited with Bobby and Mickey to walk on stage, he told them, "You gave me my life. I don't know how to thank you." They laughed, and then Bobby said, "I wish you picked a better role model." But as much excitement as there was from the pro-Trey crowd, even they had to temper their expectations once the shows arrived. Supporters still acknowledge his intense work ethic, learning the equivalent of nearly 10 albums and practicing harder than he had in years. Others remain skeptical, favoring choices like John Mayer or John Kadlisic, arguing that Trey lacked the lived-in experience with the music to truly flesh it out. Trey and the band, however, saw things differently.
But anyway, what you're saying about learning all those Dead songs, there's such great songs, and the lyrics are so good. It's one thing to listen to them, it's a whole other thing to sing them, inhabit them, and there are a couple of them that I didn't really realize that until I was singing them to the audience at the shows.
Lovely view of heaven, but I'd rather be with you. Oh, lovely view of heaven, but I'd rather be with you. Be with you. I'd rather be with you.
You're standing in a spot where the guy who was clearly the leader of this band, and the heart and soul, and it's not got nothing to do with me at all. This concert had nothing to do with me. In a certain way, it didn't even have that much to do with the band members. The concert was for the fans to have a chance to get together one more time and be with their friends and sing the songs, find that line where I'm not trying to play like the guy who I think is the greatest guitar player ever. There's a certain amount that you have to lead, right? Because that's what he did.
I'd rather be
about the things that went right, and talk about the things that went wrong. And it made me appreciate, I was out there for a few weeks, and I did a lot of calling, picking up the phone and calling Mike, and picking up the phone and calling Paige, and just saying, I appreciate you. I love you and I appreciate you. You know that, right?
Starting just 2 weeks following the final night in Chicago, the band was ready to head out on an expansive summer tour, traveling to every corner of the country from Bend, Oregon, winding through California, Texas, the Deep South, Midwest, and finally ending on the East Coast, all leading up to a festival for the ages. But why is this tour looked back on as something special? If you spent time in the online community, you've likely seen it mentioned. But where does its legacy come from? By 2015, Phish had truly started to integrate their past and present. They weren't trying to prove that they were back, nor were they overreaching for reinvention. 2013 proved without a shadow of a doubt that the boys weren't washed up. But based on a handful of the new songs, some veteran fans were still not jiving with the sense of direction they were going in. With all that uncertainty past everyone, they were able to play with relaxed confidence. The tone was celebratory, not forced. Fans sensed that the band was having fun, and that they had found their collective voice, which made shows feel more like communal triumphs, rather than experiments. There seemed to have been many well-crafted set lists, building on 2014's focus on segues, but with greater success. Not to mention the online community across the various forms of social media was more connected now than ever, across multiple generations, amplifying the tour's highlights in real time. What the year achieved over the previous ones was simply
The vibe, man.
in terms of the cultural synthesis of the band and its community circa 3.0, the stars had aligned. Although Mike had sort of a rebirth moment in 2013, this year showcased how much his confidence had strengthened based on his more aggressive bass lines. It also became evident that his sense of belonging in this new era of the Phish community had been renewed, as he appeared to having more fun than usual on stage. And most of us should know that when Mike is having fun, the rest of us are ecstatic.
If somebody didn't sleep last night, Mike was up late or something like that, we're just gonna go into that weird Mike dream world.
Page's development was more subtle, but it still executed nice interplay with the rest of the band, as well as offered clear structure for each jam's duration. He really liked to lean on the Wurlitzer in order to draw the music into a deeper groove, while switching back to the piano or the Hammond B3 organ to push for higher energy. And of course, not to mention Fishman being the absolute rock in the storm. The man is no doubt the most consistent musician in the band, the ever unfailing lifeblood of this musical organism, offering an infinitely large multi-dimensional canvas for the rest to paint on with assurance. We can't forget that it's his reliability and work ethic that makes this sonic journey possible. In just the previous year, Trey's laid-back, quasi-aimless rhythmic playing often left the band disjointed, which was sometimes described by .NET reviewers as 4 people talking at once.
In contrast, this summer saw Trey's lead playing become the undeniable force driving the band and holding jams on course. There's no question that his furious studying and practicing of Jerry's style for hours a day contributed to his sense of preparedness. He wasn't just channeling his 90s self, but integrating decades of experience into a mature, joyous style. He finally remembered how to be a leader again, of not only an unstoppable quartet, but a timeless community. Things take time to heal, a long time, and it seems Trey had found his footing this year.
To say, I love it when he says this. He said, when we're playing music, he said, I feel like we're in a lifeboat, and if somebody falls out of the boat, the other 3 guys reach right over and pull them back in. You know what I mean? And I feel like I get that same feeling from the community of people who come and see Phish, and I think that if you take one look at what was going on this summer, I'm talking about observing not the 4 of us on stage, but out in the audience, it's become something really unique and special, and I think that we're so amazed. I appreciate it so much. The guys in the band aren't shy about coming right out and saying it. It's a pretty inclusive group of people. There isn't a lot of angst, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but I mean, it feels good to me.
As far as improvisational development seen this summer, like what happened in 1995, which saw a gradual evolution of the band burning out from their balls-to-the-wall, proggy, jazz rock style of improvising, and ushering in a more groove-oriented play, due to not only a change in venue size, but also a commitment to more consistency and group cohesion going forward, the 2010s experienced a similar trend, in which earlier 3.0 experienced a lack of direction as they tried to gather the reins over their massive catalog and multiple jamming styles. It seems that 2015 is where things started to settle down a bit, as they fused more into a one-minded musical being, focused more on groove. This recalibration would go on to define the sound of the rest of the 3.0 era, particularly in 2017 and 2018, and then of course into the 2020s.
And what better time could there be to bring back the Mike Song second jam for the first time in 15 years?
thanks to the Fairly Well tour, Trey added a new envelope filter to his arsenal, in which a gritty, spacey sound was brought to the forefront, giving the summer its signature sound. This was arguably the first time since 2.0, or even the late 90s, that a single guitar effect became the defining feature of a tour's improvisational sound. It's always a blatant giveaway which era you are hearing once that compressed cow-wacka funk starts, or the boomerang delay shred fest. 2.0, with Trey's lack of a Ross compressor, focused on darker ambient textures, often using delay-heavy effects with a gritty, unfiltered tone, while early 3.0 saw the return of a clean, compressed sound, but saw less prominent evolution. In contrast, summer 2015 saw Trey unleash a sharp, biting tone produced by his new Mu-FX Mu-Tron envelope filter. This was a reproduction of the first ever commercially available envelope filter, the Mu-Tron 3 from 1972, of which both were engineered by Mike Beagle. This didn't just tweak his sound, but it acted as a catalyst for the jams, futuristic yet funk-rooted, distinguishing 2015 from the more traditional tones from the preceding tours. This signature Mu-Tron effect was featured again heavily in summer 2018. But more importantly, would go on to influence future years to have their own defining sound. With the forefront example being 2021, which is honestly just a treasure trove of new Trey tones. And I have to give out my personal favorite, in which I always referred to as the goop tone. Wait, the what tone?
Pack some goop into the top part and enjoy it a little bit.
You're listening to Page, and you're listening to, and then I'm listening to the way the sound bounces off the back wall, and then we get very, very quiet, and that sound kind of becomes the sound of the audience, and it doesn't really feel like anything's stopped or started. It's really just more incredibly cool sounds.
Talker these days that I used to be when I would shut up for 15 minutes at a time. And I got to walk around the venue out there, and I walked all the way up there and up where that guy was waving his arms. Hi, guy, those guys up there. And it was there that I was standing when suddenly I felt a drop of rain dripping off the top of my head. And I looked up and saw no clouds, and I realized that it was bird shit. And then I thought, maybe tonight's the night to do Famous Mockingbird. It's a sign from the heavens.
Why is Magnaball hailed as the greatest fest post-reunion? After witnessing the congealment of years of work towards forming a new strong foundation and reaching cultural catharsis in the new era, it's only expected that the festival ending the nationwide tour would contain a distilled version of what was just achieved. Magnaball might be one of the only festivals after Big Cypress to reach the same type of vibe as the 1.0 festivals, where everything just fell into place perfectly. Nearing the end of a historic tour, the energy, the set lists, the weather, and of course still staying true to hosting it independently. Not to mention Trey was so excited to talk to the audience, like they were all his group of friends.
Basically, the point I'm trying to make is that none of this could happen without a team of incredible people, and it happens all the time. We don't get a chance to thank them very often. Don't suck while I'm saying the name, suck after I say the name.
Everyone was on the same wavelength, and there was boundless amounts of gratitude pouring out of the band. And not to mention, because of the curveball situation in 2018, this would be the last festival for 9 years until we saw Magna Gin in 2024. Just like what you saw earlier with the Mann Twist, we were also presented with profound examples of the band's musical storytelling. Jams that were less dance party or crazy multi-section experiments, and more gather round, young folk, for ye be in for a grand old tale. The festival included a ton of unique things for the fans to discover. This included surreal art installations as always, a two-story structure dubbed the Laboratory, and the M Lounge with a nightclub atmosphere, providing unique spaces to hang out before and after shows. Not to mention, Holly Bowling also held her own late night sets over in the campgrounds. For games, the festival throughout the weekend hosted cornhole tournaments, a Phish-based trivia game show, as well as campground games like giant bowling, Kevin Shapiro hosting the Bunny, of course, and a bluegrass band that popped up on the grounds, featuring a special guest appearance. Late Saturday night, after the third set concluded on an already legendary show, the boys went on stage behind a 140-foot-long projection screen set up behind the bleachers of the racetrack, where they proceeded to lay down 50 minutes of piercing, mind-melting music, paired with visuals provided by Moment Factory, a cutting-edge visual studio based out of Montreal.
In the song list, you only have to write it once. Jimmy is not of the mountains. Jimmy is he's like an East Coast guy who kind of moves out to Colorado, playing is one of his favorite old rock songs. After midnight, we gonna let it all hang. Gratitude to all of you. Also to everybody watching and listening at home, this is for you guys too. And basically what I want to say is that I can't really begin to tell you how much the four of us appreciate community and this scene that we look at every night. That's become so beautiful and so unique. And we want to thank you guys, really, from the bottom of our hearts. So, it was a great summer.